Joy to be with you on this Friday, completing another week and finishing the month of June and into July already. It's hard to believe. And these are great days to serve the Lord. And I trust that we're soul conscious during this time. But I do want to, as we think of all that we can do for Christ and we think of what our lives really are all about, Satan loves to get us discouraged by getting us off of that fine edge of truth. And one of the things that people with a great heart that want to serve God fall into, and that is performance acceptance. Wanting to do all that they're supposed to do and somehow thinking if they do all of that, God will be pleased and even others will be pleased. And yet when there's that motivation, though we want to please God, when we're not depending upon Him, but we instead are trying to, through external effort, make a mark, we will come up empty and discouraged, and that's where burnout comes. In Galatians chapter 5, you have a tremendous challenge about not continuing on with the mentality of the Judaizers who were trying to keep the law to gain favor with God. And the apostle under inspiration writes in chapter 5 verse 1, "Stand fast therefore in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage." We have liberty. Now this liberty is not liberty to do what we want to do. Galatians makes that very, very clear. You find that in Romans chapter 6. God forbid, once we are freed from sin, should we live any longer therein? Absolutely not. But this liberty is speaking of the right mentality, the freedom we have to do what God wants us to do because we have His very person within us, and it is His working, not ours. Earlier in the chapter, in chapter 2, I am crucified with Christ, and nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And it goes on to speak of the life of Christ in us. And so, as believers, as we think of the opportunities, as we want to serve the Lord, as many challenges are going forth across our nation for Christians to win souls to Christ and to pray and to really serve the Lord, let's don't get on the ground of human performance. Let's instead get on the ground of faith for God's grace to enable us to do all that He wants us to do. You know, when it's His grace doing it, you don't get burned out. You've got the strength, you've got the wisdom, you've got the power to be able to do anything that God has called you to do. And you know what God's called you to do, and you know what is not God's will for that time. You've got peace that God gives you as to how to order your life. It's a wonderful place to be. Walking in the Spirit is love, joy, peace. And there ought to be that rest in our souls when we're under orders from on high, not trying to please men, but having a heart to please God through His own working, knowing that our efforts aren't going to matter anyway. And so as we endeavor to use our summer for Christ, let's don't get bound up, entangled again with the yoke of bondage, as this verse says, but instead let's stand fast in the liberty that God has given us to serve Him with all of our heart.